These principles of free expression, of open inquiry, of thought pluralism and constructive dialogue and disagreement, those are fundamental things that we believe in at the University of Denver. And I want everyone to know that if you adhere to those principles and our values, of course, then we've got your back. We have your back.
Jeremy Haefner, welcome to Heterodox Out Loud.
Thank you for having me. I'm very looking forward to the conversation.
As my team was helping me prep for this conversation, we uncovered something about you that I didn't know, and that's that you're a triathlete. Indeed, you've completed, as I understand, 5 Ironman triathlons.
Well, actually 10 now.
No!
Yeah. It is a passion of mine. And
my gosh.
It's a way of balancing, for my own personal interests. Of course, I have my family, and that comes number one, and then the work at the university, and then triathlons, Ironmans. Yeah.
That's amazing. So my team wanted me to ask you, which is tougher, training for an Ironman or leading a university?
They are mutually compatible in many ways, right? Because when I'm at mile 82 on the bicycle leg, which is 112 miles, this is after swimming 2.5 miles and knowing that I have a marathon. If I can say, I can do this, I can finish this, then I will. I will have succeeded in that. And there's oftentimes in my day-to-day job when I says, if I can get through this and if I can really help the campus move forward, then we do. And that's how I look at both of those endeavors.
That's lovely. I want to just start talking about some of the work you've been doing at the University of Denver, and just generally talking about some of your initiatives regarding building a culture of open inquiry.
Yeah.
So at HXA, that's what we're interested in primarily. How do you build a whole culture of open inquiry? And we think of that culture as having 3 components. You know this, I'm sure. But one of them is the free exchange of ideas. Another is diverse viewpoints. And another is constructive disagreement. If you have one or two of those things without the other, you don't really get the knowledge producing factory at work. So for example, if you have formal free expression of ideas, so no one's constrained in speaking, but everyone on campus thinks exactly the same way, doesn't do much good.
Yeah.
If they think really differently, you get a diverse faculty and a diverse student body, but no one knows how to listen to each other, then you don't get the magic either. So we're interested in that whole culture. And we're looking at some of the things you've been doing, which we've been following for some time. The Spark Day is one initiative. The Denver Dialogues is another one that you've been doing. I just wondered if you could say a bit about debate across the curriculum.
Yeah.
Can you just talk to us and talk to our listeners about each of those programs, what they are, what effect you think they're having? Just tell us about them, please.
Yeah, I think the principle that we started all this on is the notion that those 3 key ideas, those 3 key principles that HXA is all about, are also what we are all about at the University of Denver. But I knew that culture changes really slowly and has to start really, in a certain sense, at the top. Saying these principles of free expression, of open inquiry, of thought pluralism and constructive dialogue and disagreement, those are fundamental things that we believe in at the University of Denver. And I want everyone to know that if you adhere to those principles and our values, of course, then we've got your back. We have your back. And the ways that we started doing that are organic ideas that have come from the faculty. So the Denver Dialogues, for example, is a wonderful initiative from our Joseph Corbell School for International Studies that really brings in partners like AEI, Hoover Institute, New America, and Aspen Institute, and brings in scholars from these think tanks to discuss in front of our students, faculty, and staff, issues that have some controversy on them. So whether it's immigration or congressional reform or democracy over the world and climate change, for example. These are hotly contested topics, and to see scholars have discussions that are very balanced and students walk away with the fact that you can have these discussions and disagree is really, really powerful.
And how often does a Denver dialogue occur? Is it once a year, twice a year?
It's at least once a quarter. So they're organized by, again, the Korbel School and the Scrivener Institute for Public Policy, which is part of the Korbel School. And they worked really hard to really bring in this balanced kind of conversation for our students, faculty, and staff. They did it at the Aspen Institute a summer when there was a focus on security in particular. Of course, one of our famous alums is Condoleezza Rice, and she is, of course, the director of the Hoover Institute. So she kicked off our inaugural Denver Dialogue with the other leaders of those think tanks, and it was a marvelous gathering of diverse thought.
When was that? When did it kick off?
Geez, that was almost 2 years ago, so that would have been 23. I'm pretty sure of that. Yeah.
And on those events, do you find that? So I ran a center at Brown that had something we called the Janus Forum, or the Janus Lecture Series, which was 2 speakers and conversation.
Yep.
What we found early on was that sometimes we'd get 2 speakers who were really combative with each other. A memorable one for me was the topic was justice, gender, and the American dream. And we had Harvey Mansfield, the well-known conservative from Harvard, who just written a book called Manliness, pitted up against Catherine McKinnon, who a very famous feminist law professor and philosopher. And it was an incredible event, but it was kind of like a combat on stage. And we were worried that the student experience was really sort of passively watching an exchange of ideas rather than actually. What we cared about was the students, what happened in their minds, and did they change? I'm just wondering, have you had that experience with the Denver Dialogues? Are there any? Is it passive? Do you have any sense that it's actually active? Is it having the effect on students that you want it to have, or does it become a spectator sport?
It's a great question. One of the things, of course, that we always insist on doing is having a robust Q&A of the speakers. And Korbel School does a really good job at empowering students to ask questions along the way.
Nice.
So I think from our student perspective, it has this potential for really engaging students and not be passive around this. The other idea that we've had modest successes is to build little follow-up seminars around the discussions that are student-focused, and faculty lead those discussions in order to help the students think, well, break down the arguments that all the speakers presented, and which ones did you feel, carried your thoughts along the way, and did they argue persuasively? So we need to do more of that, but I think that is a great example of that. It is sinking in. If I may, I can also talk about the debate across the curriculum, because
please.
This is an innovation from one of our most respected faculty members, former president of the Faculty Senate. He was a longtime debate coach, so he believes firmly in the power of debate as a pedagogical tool. So he's introduced this notion of debate across the curriculum, much like kind of writing across the curriculum is. And what he has done is to bring non-competitive debate into the classrooms. Whatever faculty member who's teaching a particular first-year seminar or senior seminar might be open to, and they take 3 class periods. That's non-trivial in a quarter system. And they introduce the idea of a non-competitive debate. They select the topic which is relevant to the course. They break the students into 2 different groups rather randomly, so that they don't necessarily choose the side that they're comfortable with. In fact, it's much better if they don't. They research, and then they come back and they offer their positions on it. So it's not really a back and forth, but then there's this moderated question period. And that's where students really become engaged. On the 3rd visit, they debrief, of course. But what's really gratifying from my perspective is they do a pre-assessment and a post-assessment.
Nice.
And they look at politicization and the affective approach behind that. And there is statistically relevant data now showing that it is changing kind of hearts and minds of our students. They feel more empowered that they can enter into discussions when there is a controversial issue. They know that research and the behavior of how they conduct themselves is really important in that process. And that's what is really taught in that thing. So,
And so what really strikes me is that you're measuring this. You're not just
yes,
saying we put on the event. This is what we're seeing at some universities so far, maybe the first stage of a transition towards more heterodoxy on campus,
yeah,
is that people are now organizing events like the one you described, but they often don't measure. And they don't, and that's maybe the future stage will be they will measure
sure, yeah,
and see what the impacts are.
yeah.
But it's a sign that it's not merely performative because you're actually finding out whether it works or not.
It is actually working. Now, what we don't know is how sticky is that
Good.
change in students' hearts and minds, right? So
Right.
we're trying to figure out longitudinally, can we show that this debate across the curriculum is having a deep impact in the lives of the students during their time at the University of Denver and then even beyond, right?
Have you heard of the AI tool Sway?
Yes, I have.
So we did a podcast on it recently. HXA is
Yeah.
co-sponsoring it, but it's as you know, and some of our listeners may remember, it's an AI tool developed by some of our members using the HXA way, and it breaks a classroom into two groups, breaks a classroom of students into pairs based on their answers to questions. So they have different viewpoints. Then it moderates a conversation between them.
Yeah.
And I can imagine Sway being a follow-up that might help with the stickiness, perhaps, that you were just mentioning.
Absolutely. I've talked about Sway to my faculty director for
thank
free
you.
expression and tried to get them to. I think there is. We're also piloting a similar AI tool that the Coalition for Presidents for Civic Education is.
I'm aware.
Into that. Yeah.
I wasn't aware you were using that, but I'm aware of that tool. There's so many innovations happening now in this area. It's fantastic.
Yeah, and artificial intelligence is clearly going to disrupt higher education.
That is true, but that'll be another episode together, perhaps. I want to ask you about Spark Day, which I heard about several years ago, I think.
Yeah.
Can you just tell our listeners what it is and how it works?
Yeah, sure. So, in a nutshell, Spark Day is a celebration of free expression, open inquiry, civil discourse and dialogue. And it's intended to raise the awareness of our entire campus around these issues. We've done it, we're starting our fourth year. And the idea is to constantly grow the participation. We've been a lot focused on our internal community, but lately in the last couple of years, we've invited other faculty and students from the Front Range universities, Boulder, Denver, Colorado Springs. We offer different ways of getting at the issues of free expression and civil discourse. So one of my favorite is a student panel that we always run. And sometimes on the panel is both students and faculty, and they talk about the challenges of free expression on a campus like the University of Denver. Can they feel comfortable at bringing forward ideas that may disagree with the faculty member in the class? Can they bring forward ideas that they know are going to find disagreement with their fellow students? And so it really gets into the heart of this cultural change. There's workshops that we also celebrate around how to elevate civil discourse in your classroom discussions, for example. And hopefully, we're also igniting students to really take a leadership role in creating their own group that really supports free expression. I'd love to see more empowerment of our students and our alums, as well as our faculty, which is, of course, led by HXA.
And have there been incidents on Spark Day where students have taken it as an invitation to be, I'm not sure what the right word is, simply inflammatory? or outrageous and things. And have people use Spark Day to exercise their less high angel, their worser angels?
You're the worser angels. We haven't really seen that yet. I think they are coming in with great respect for the notion that they're representing the University of Denver in this way. But I welcome the little grittiness that we could be introducing into this, and feel like that.
Why do you say that? Why do you say you welcome the grittiness? What do you
Well,
What do you mean?
I think, when we think about civil discourse, we often talk about respect, and sometimes I think we walk away with the notion that dialogue has to be logical and flowing and unemotional. But come on, this is the world we live in. Emotions are going to surface here.
Right.
And the question is, can we be resilient when we hit those moments?
Nice.
And really recover from them quickly and get back to the heart of the matter, which is ideas and not people that need to be contested in that regard.
That's extremely well said. And if I can just add to that, we have conversations around here at the Siegel Center about the bridge building efforts that we're seeing at many universities across the country, which we applaud. We're very happy for that. But we also sometimes worry that some of those bridge building efforts turn dialogue into just being nice to each other all the time.
Yeah.
And there's a role within the free exchange of ideas when we're searching for truth on serious issues, for strong emotions, tempers even.
Mm-hmm.
I have a dear friend, a philosopher at Brown, David Estlund, who does deliberative theory, and he has an article that I love. It's called "Deliberation Down and Dirty," and he explores all the different times in which there's grittiness, to use your word. The grittiness is sometimes necessary to make these conversations happen on topics where things are kind of just frozen and no one can break in. So I think it's very interesting that you're sensitive to the grit.
Yeah, the grit, the sandpaper there.
I want to shift to one of the policies that you've adopted. It's been much in the news lately, the policy of institutional neutrality, which, as you probably know, is part of one of the requirements of the Trump's compact that the universities adopt institutional neutrality. At Denver, you did it before Trump was elected, I believe, in 2024, as I recall.
Yep. 2022 is when we really started.
Oh, is that right?
Yep.
Even sooner. Wow.
Yeah.
Respect. Can you just tell us a little bit about what led you to, I guess you're an early adopter, what led you to institutional neutrality? What's your experience been?
It's really, really hard. So I'll talk a little bit about that. It was in 2022 when the provost and I really started questioning how we use the university voice. It was very ad hoc. We didn't have a set of principles to guide us. We felt compelled to respond to just about any geopolitical kind of issue right then.
Why did you feel compelled?
It was. It's a great question. I think it was how the previous administrations had entered into it, and I think the machines of the university just kind of wanted to carry that forward.
Were you aware of other university leaders in the Front Range and beyond making statements all the time?
There was a lot of conversation.
It was considered part of the job.
Yeah, it was part of the job, and it just was also untenable. We all kind of said, we can't keep doing this. So you had the Ukraine-Russia war break out in February, and that was really the last point where I had used the university voice outside of neutrality. And we saw Supreme Court decisions in the pipeline. We knew that the Dobbs case was going to be announced in June, and we knew that Students for Fair Admissions was already being considered. And we knew that there were going to be other acts of violence out there that may have occurred clear across the world. So we just made the decision that we have to pivot, and we have to adopt the Calvin principles of neutrality. And so I started working with my cabinet.
I'm sorry,
Sure.
I just want to interrupt if I may. I'm just interested in that moment. So you mentioned the Calvin report. Were you aware of the Calvin report, or were you looking for a solution to the problem? Like, how do I get out? How do I get out of this? How do I get off this treadmill of constant making?
Yeah.
And then the Calvin report, of course, is a very deeply principled mission of the university. The university is the home and sponsor. Critics on itself, the critic. So was it expediency that led you to the policy? Then you found Calvin as a way to explain why? Or how did it happen to you, if I can ask the inside view, if you don't mind
Yeah.
sharing it?
Well, so this,
If you remember.
yeah, I'm going to try to remember. Well, this whole effort around open inquiry, search for truth, free expression, started, or at least for me, when I became chancellor. And during my inauguration, I made this one of three kind of anchors to how I was really going to be engaged with the campus and on broader issues that affected the university. I knew, of course, that the University of Chicago had this incredible reputation of free speech and a dedication to it. And I remember a conversation with President Emeritus Zimmerman, who had recently stepped down. I'm so fortunate to have had that opportunity because shortly afterwards, of course, he passed away.
He was my mentor, by the way. I mean,
Was he really?
when he was a provost at Brown.
Oh, sure.
And I remember the first time I went to his office, and I was a young assistant professor, and he was just fiery about these issues.
Yeah.
And it was the first time I'd met an administrator who was fiery about these issues, and it just deeply affected me. But please go on.
And affected all of us in higher education. And I learned from him that yes, Chicago had an approach around neutrality, but it wasn't black and white either. They knew that they had to respond to incidences that profoundly and deeply impacted their community.
That's right.
And so we started building an approach around that very idea of knowing that neutrality is an imperfect idea. I'm not even sure you can be neutral, but restrained use of university voice is where we really ended up. And those times when we do use it, or when we want to defend the very important principles of a university, academic freedom, our values of inclusion, say, for example, and so forth. So we vetted this across, key stakeholder groups across campus and with the trustees, and we eventually decided that this was the way to go, and we piloted it for several months. And then most recently, we've made it a policy standing at the University of Denver.
That little bit that you just said, it was probably more interesting to me than you know, or than you can know, because we're really interested in following in a variety of different policies. How does a policy become successfully implemented and woven into a culture of the place?
Yeah.
And we've seen some instances at some universities across the country where leaders adopt institutional neutrality, for example, but without much buy-in, without much piloting. They sort of drop it down from the top, as it were, and there's often feedback and negative complications. Right. And I'm sure there was in your case too. And the way you describe it is how I think of it as well. It's an ongoing process to navigate. What does it mean? What's a fundamental interest of the university?
Yep.
Some people think that adopting institutional restraint as opposed to institutional neutrality is a softball way of doing it, and it's unprincipled. I'm not so sure about that. We're committed to the neutrality view, but there is I like the thought that the principles themselves are alive.
Yeah.
And it requires ongoing discussion and consideration. It's not a mechanical thing. It's now taken off your plate entirely. It won't be the thing you do every Monday morning anymore. But,
right. Or Tuesday morning or Wednesday morning,
there'll be some Fridays.
Crazy.
Can I just ask you about that then? So I'm just going to still be really frank with you on the questions, and
please
take that any way you like. So you said that there have been some times when it's been tempting, or maybe you have spoken out. Have you spoken out about the essential interests of the university with respect to the Trump administration's policies?
We have. This is where I really appreciate working with my colleagues across the country. The American Association for Colleges and Universities has been a wonderful source of collegiality and vibrancy around the issues that are most important to me and other leaders in higher education in these really challenging times. And so, a, a vocal supporter of the constructive engagement statement that came out most recently regarding the compact. We've signed on to really reject the notion of the compact because it threatens directly academic freedom and the institutional independence that we've enjoyed for years. And they also then most recently came out with really what are the principles that we do believe in. And there's a lot of parallels between those principles and the compact, but it of course vehemently defends academic freedom and at the very core of our principles in that regard. So that is one example of where we've leaned out.
But you're also known for advocating or reconciling a commitment to open inquiry with a commitment to inclusion.
Yes.
Which at HXA we think those things go together,
Yes.
or should go together, or
Yeah.
must go together. We must
Yeah.
find ways to bring them together. But for example, with Supreme Court cases that affect admissions, for example, did you see those as threats to inclusion, as you understand inclusion? Did you speak out about any of those decisions that you saw coming down the pipipeline? As you frankly
well,
shared
so
with us?
yeah, interesting. So I'll give you a little bit more background because it might be interesting. When we did make this pivot, we had made a statement on Russia, Ukraine, and we then all of a sudden didn't make statements that came out about the Supreme Court ruling or what was happening in the Middle East, say, for example. And I took a lot of flack and pushback on that, and I understand why.
From whom?
From our community members, mostly our alumni base. They said, "Why did you come out in favor of Ukraine under this situation, but you haven't come out in this position?" And I had to explain to them, we made a policy shift, and it was hard. And I know it lands for you, whoever wrote me, in a difficult way, but this is the way that I believe is the best way for the university to run its organization, really empowering faculty and students to grapple with these issues and give them the agency to make up their own minds around these kinds of important issues. But there will be times when we will take a stand, or we'll certainly support our community with resources if they feel like they've been particularly hit hard and harmed. This is what a university does. We support each other in a caring way.
I spoke with you a minute ago about subtlety or softness or getting buy-in when a university leader adopts a new policy. That's not always possible. Sometimes there are directives that come from Washington, D.C. that seem to require more direct action. And so I just want to turn now to talk a bit about DEI.
Sure.
And the Trump administration's policies regarding DEI and how that's affected DU. Can you just tell us a bit about what your experience has been with the new DEI directives and how that's affecting your leadership?
Yeah, I think we took a pretty measured approach because as soon as the Trump administration came in power, we knew there was an executive order around DEI. We knew there was a Dear Colleague letter coming out on Valentine's Day, and we still kind of waited. We were just assessing. We wanted to see what other institutions were doing. Some institutions came out really quick and started changing titles and really pivoting so that they wouldn't be under the microscope. And I get that, but we really wanted to think carefully about what is DEI 3.0 going to look like, and this literally started way back even before Trump was elected, because we saw the public sentiment change around what that meant. And we wanted to be prepared for that, to be quite honest. And we wanted to rethink, are we doing everything we could into leaning into our values of inclusion, really leaning in? And so over the course of all these months, 18 months, we had been working in the background, trying to figure out what it would look like. What do we want to be the principles that would really guide our values of inclusion? Of course, then the Department of Justice memo came out in July. We had already set up a community and belonging kind of steering group to help give us
July of 2025.
July of 2025. Yeah, thank you. And knew that these were interpretations of law by the Department of Justice, who is, authorized to implement and to enforce the law as they interpret it. They're not making new law, but they do the interpretation. And we felt it was in the best interest of the university to adopt changes in those, or practices, if you will. The unfortunate thing was that we weren't quite ready to really tell the campus community what we had been really designing through task force and other conversations. That came 2 weeks later. And so there was...
You mean the announcement came 2 weeks later?
Yeah.
It had been
Sorry, I'm not being super clear.
That's fine.
On this
but so you're saying you were working on a transformation of DEI before the directive
exactly
came through.
Right. Yeah.
But didn't you release a statement expressing disappointment in the interpretation of the administration?
Oh, for sure. Oh, yeah. There was just no question that what they were saying about our approach around DEI was an affront, an attack to our values of inclusion. And while I wanted to be very clear that we will continue to support our value of inclusion, and we're going to lean in heavily on it, it means now we might have to change some of our practices. I was particularly upset that we really had to rethink how scholarships for protected class students were really considered discriminatory practice. To me, a donor should really feel empowered to use their money in the most effective way that they deem fit. But the federal government was saying universities can't accept this money. So we've been working to adopt new language in some of these scholarships to still accomplish much of our inclusiveness, but not be exclusive at the same time.
Can I ask? I want to just go back just a minute for a moment about the expression of disappointment with the administration's interpretation. So, how do you square that with a commitment to institutional neutrality? And I'll put the question in a little more pointed way, and we may find that you and I disagree about something, but we'll find out. So, as I read most interpretations of the Calvin principle, and the HXA has our own model called Extraordinary You. Our model has the same feature. What counts as the core mission of the university is something like the knowledge-seeking and knowledge transmission function.
Absolutely.
So the idea that that's our main, our telos, as John Haidt would put it. But is inclusion part of the knowledge-seeking? Is it inclusion for the service of knowledge-seeking, or is it inclusion for the sake of social justice or repairing past wrongs? And if it's not inclusion for the sake of knowledge-seeking only, how do you square that with institutional neutrality?
Yeah, that's a great question. So completely agree that inclusion has to be all-encompassing. So it doesn't matter of your race or your orientation or your religious beliefs or even your own perspectives to get to the point of diversity of thought, say, for example. It has to be all things are welcome in a sense at the university, because otherwise you can't really lay claims to inclusion in the same sense. So this notion that inclusion means differing perspectives, differing ideas is absolutely fundamental. But I guess I felt like the direct attacks on diversity, equity, inclusion were really directed to our community of marginalized students, faculty, and draft. It felt more personal than it did from a policy point of view, and that's what I felt was really objectionable. That it struck at even our value of inclusion in a sense. The practices that we have done, we were probably ready to make some changes around how we look at things, and certainly the Supreme Court decision laid the foundation for that. Diversity statements, for example, in an era of generative AI, become kind of outmoded, in my opinion, and quite frankly, are not an effective way of really looking at students and faculty and how they look at our definition of inclusion, right? Open to everyone and really welcoming and all.
So was there a period where you guys used diversity statements or DEI statements in hiring? And do you still?
We had a long time practice of using those, and they ended in July when we made the statement that we were going to comply with the interpretations from the Department of Justice. It hurt. It hurt the community. It landed hard because it felt to them that we were taking a step back from our values. But I wanted to emphasize that, especially when 2 weeks later we could announce what we had been working on, which is a new division of community support and engagement, which would really support all of our community, really making inclusion, leaning in heavily on inclusion, leaning in on pluralism, free expression as well, a part of the new ways that we were approaching things. It wasn't that our values had changed at all. No, not at all. In fact, they've been magnified even more.
I want to ask you a sort of a general question about your leadership. Some people talk about viewpoint diversity, and they're thinking primarily about the ideological dimension. People so there's a lot of surveys and data that you're familiar with, I'm sure, showing that there's been a marked increase in the difference and the ratio between Democrats and Republicans on faculty. So in the 60s was roughly 2-1. Currently nationally it's something like 20-1, a huge delta in that dimension. And we think it's important that there be a variety of ideologically diverse voices on campus. We worry when the ratio becomes too big. But another thing that we emphasize around HXA sometimes is that the really important and fundamental distinction or division on campuses within faculties is not so much between Democrats and Republicans. It's between something like professors who believe that the purpose of the university is clearly searching for knowledge and the transmission of knowledge and searching for truth, and professors who think the university's purpose is something different. It's something more like, let's say, social justice in some way.
Yep.
And I'm just wondering, because you're known as, and you've made Denver well known as one of the schools that's really leading the country in terms of standing up for the knowledge-seeking interpretation. How has that played in your campus with the members of the faculty and perhaps students who share the other view, who reject the view that the HXA exists to support? Do you feel strong opposition and pushback from your own faculty members because of these stands you're taking, this culture that you're building? Do you regularly encounter opposition from within, from people who say, that's not what I want my university to be? I want it to be a vanguard for social justice. How do you want to respond to that? And I just want to add, I know it's a bit, I don't mean to put you on that fence. Like, I'm for truth, therefore I'm opposed to social justice. Two things can be true at once. I'm really interested in the dynamics on your campus. Are you feeling pushback as you adopt these policies, which we hope other university leaders will adopt following you? Can you just give us any words of wisdom to them, or from your own experience, about what it means to face opposition within your own faculty for some of the things you've been doing?
Yeah, there's just no question that there are pockets of faculty that would disagree with many of the decisions that I've made as chancellor. I hope and expect that the majority of faculty see the direction that we are taking the university and feel like they have a role to play in that. For me, I do believe the fundamental purpose of a university, and I could talk a little bit more about this, is
Please do, as you like.
Is the seeking of truth, however that plays out, and in order to do that, you have to have an environment that deeply embraces free and open inquiry. That is critical to it, and therefore it leads to, well, you've got to have free expression. You have to have an ardent defense of academic freedom. You have to understand that we need to help students learn the competencies and skills of civil discourse. All those kinds of key issues on that. To me, this notion of a purpose of a university, and I use a university as as really important, transcends even the mission and vision of a university. It says we can't veer off of this fundamental idea of why we are all gathered here. It is the discovery of new knowledge, and it's the education of our students. And if there's anything that casts doubt on that new knowledge, then we're not fulfilling our purpose. If there's anything that we are not helping students learn and grow in, then we're not living into our obligations on this. So I feel very strongly about that. But because we also support academic freedom, we know that there will be faculty that bring their own perspectives into the classroom. And I do honestly believe for the vast majority of faculty that they may have a political leaning one way or another, but they are open to creating this environment of inquiry in the classroom. And I think it's challenging in today's environment where we are so polarized, and equipping them with the skills to teach in that is really, really hard. But I think fundamentally they are that way.
In this polarized climate, listening to the other side seems like an act of betrayal to many people. It's like you're betraying your own side. As we're coming toward the end of our conversation, I want to be sure we have time to talk about one of the initiatives that you're soon to launch, maybe in the process of launching now, the National Academy for Pluralism and Free Expression, sometimes called the Free Expression Academy. That's what I'm hearing it called already as a nickname already.
Yeah.
Can you just tell our listeners, what that initiative is about, what stage it's in, and what you hope for it?
Yeah. So the University of Denver has, I think, a rich history of really serving the city of Denver, the state of Colorado, as a real convener on issues of substance. So over the course of decades, we've seen the University of Denver convene dialogues and discussions on immigration, and really how that has, say, for example, impacted public policy. It was back in 2013 when we had a strategic initiative around that very topic that really informed our senators to lean in on immigration policy. And while it wasn't adopted by Congress and the president, we did feel like there was a real contribution that we've made. So this convening role has always been one that we've done an exceptional job with, and we continue that to this day. I guess I felt that tapping into that convening role was just a logical extension of our commitment to free expression and pluralism. And while the University of Chicago had built a huge reputation on free speech, I felt the University of Denver could really build a reputation around pluralism. The notion that we really adopt difference as a fundamental strength of ourselves as individuals, as organizations, as our state, our country. We are stronger, better, more informed, more creative, more innovative because of difference, all kinds of difference. And I really believe that. So if I aspire to see anything, it will be that our graduates become evangelists for pluralism, evangelists for difference. I think it's how our country was built. So the National Academy for Free Expression and Pluralism is our aspiration to build this convening role to really embrace pluralism and spread the word about how important it is. Doesn't mean we're going to agree. We are definitely not going to agree, but we're going to actually love and embrace the fact that we are different. And we're fortunate to have a significant donor to support it. So it's officially the John and Sandy Miller National Academy for Free Expression and Pluralism.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I'm very excited by that. It's a great vision that he shares with myself and others at the university as well. We do expect that this will have a focus on our own campus, but more importantly, what I'd like to see the University of Denver do through this academy is be a convener nationally, because we don't have all the answers. There's great work that's being done by Brown and, of course, the University of Chicago and Vanderbilt and so forth. So let's bring these great ideas all together and share them, and maybe we can iterate on these ideas and or bring them to our own campuses. And then what about how can we help leaders in K through 12 also think about these issues? Again, we don't have the answers that might work in K through 12, but can we help support the teachers and the administrators in really helping them navigate these same issues? Same is true with the corporate world. They're the ones that are recipients of our graduates, and I want our corporate world to be empowered with the same set of tools that we might use in higher education.
I really appreciate your talking about the convening power, right? That power that you have, and I'm especially interested to hear that you see, as I see too, that there are so many experiments going on now across the country at university campuses. I'm in conversation with presidents and chancellors all the time who have their own initiatives, a new way of doing it, little wrinkles on things, little twists they try, little obstacles they faced and ways they found around it. And I just think it would be, HXA, of course, does a lot of this work, but I think very parallel with the work you're doing. But I just really am excited about the idea about you guys creating this center to, an academy to bring all these things together. It's been such a pleasure having you on Heterodox Out Loud. I started by telling you how much I admire the work you do and we all at HXA do. I want to close on that same note. The story's not yet finished. There's more chapters to come.
For sure.
For you and your leadership. We just wanted you to know that we watch you, we admire you, and we wish you well as you go forward.
Well, John, thank you so much for having me on. I admire HXA. We've had conversations of how can we amplify and expand our commitment to Heterodox Academy on our campus. And I know I've got some really strong vocal voices in support of that. And I can't wait to see us really achieve those wonderful goals. We so like what you're doing and want to be complimentary all the way.
Thank you. And from our side, quite the same. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. Heterodox Out Loud is a nonprofit production of Heterodox Academy. We rely solely on support of listeners like you. If you enjoyed today's episode, please follow our podcast, leave a rating or a review, and share it with your friends and network. Your support helps us reach more individuals who value diverse perspectives in higher education. If you are in higher education, visit heterodoxacademy.org and join the thousands of professors and students from all around the world who are working to support open inquiry. Until next time, I'm John Tomasi, reminding you that great minds don't always think alike.